G'day Bomber fans, we have 3 massive days ahead of us. The trade period is set to explode this week. It ends on Wednesday and there are still so many deals that need to get done. Essendon are yet to complete a trade, but it's looking like we will as early as today in fact. And I have the day off work just to nerd out over the trade period. So anything finalised today I will be posting about. That of course means you should subscribe to stay tuned. And even if something isn't done today, I'll be posting tomorrow, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, every day this week. But let's get into the trade update. Okay, starting with pick 9, this could be or will be traded as early as today probably. For a few days, this has been the talk of the town. Teams they have been trying pretty hard to come and get it. St Kilda were keen, North were keen, Melbourne have been keen the longest, and that is the team that will strike a trade. Melbourne and Essendon are set to swap first round picks. We are giving away pick 9, we receive Melbourne's future first, and on top of that, we also get their current pick 28 and pick 40. And I think there's also possibly something else shuffled around later on, but that is the main heart of the deal, us trading away pick 9, Melbourne giving us a future first, a current second and a current third. This means we will not be selecting a player before Kako in the draft. There was talk of a bid coming early for Kako, and rather than wait till draft night, we are set to act early and load up on another first rounder for next year. And this also means we generate enough capital to match a bid on Kako when it comes. We would hold picks 28, 31 and 40 after this deal, and maybe something else later down the line. We don't know yet. And if the Stringer deal gets done, we have more as well. We were always going to get the capital to match a bid for Kako, but now we have put ourselves in a really strong position for next year's draft and trade period as well, and maybe even this year still as well. The fact we got 2 future firsts mean we can now trade live on draft night if a player we want is sliding down the order, like we did last year with Caddy and Roberts. So I don't think the hopes of us getting 2 high profile draftees is dead. It just means we won't be getting a top 10 pick. And I think something people need to realise, and I'm not changing my tune here, I've said this all year, this is being labelled as a super draft, not because of the high-end talent. There is definitely high-end talent, but more because of the depth itself, the depth of the draft. This draft, that's really deep. There are players in the top 30 or 40 that I rate more than guys in the top 20 last year. And I think the top 5 or 6 talent-wise is probably on par with other drafts. It's the fact that it maintains that consistent level of talent for longer. That's what makes this such a good draft. It's why clubs are trying so hard to get picks 9 and 13 and not trying to get picks inside the top 5. We just so happen to be in an awkward range with that Kako bid, but it means we make the most of a bad situation and load up on capital for that bid while improving our draft hand next year. I really don't mind this at all. I don't know why people are complaining. Look at Hawthorn. They traded pick 14 for a future first and second from Carlton, and everyone's going on about how good that trade is. Our trade trumps that and then some. We get a future first from a team likely to finish out of the 8 again, and then we get a high second and third as well. I think this in theory is a good trade. I don't know the full details yet, so I'm not going to judge too quickly, but in theory, this makes sense for the club. It may be finalised by the time this video is out, and when it is, I'll try and upload a quick reaction video to that. I luckily have the day off work, as I said, so I'll be sitting at my desk watching everything unfold. But yeah, our first trade is under Rosa is set to be complete. We'll be parting ways with pick 9, getting a few selections back in return. I'm sure I'll talk about this video more later today. Sorry, this trade more later today. Jake Stringer, now the last we heard of this, GWS were still doing their homework on Stringer and loosely offered up pick 56 in a trade, but those talks were very unofficial. Trade talks will really ramp up this week for Stringer if GWS still elect to pursue him. The club will try and get the most out of a deal for him. Essendon, Rosa hinted at welcoming Stringer back if a suitable deal can't get done, one that gives the Bombers the correct compensation, but that could be cheeky mind games being played to force GWS to up their offer. I think it's made hard by the fact news broke over the weekend about the AFL integrity warning and the nature of Jake Stringer's friendship with the former criminal in the rooms. In fact, it's believed that Collingwood pulled out of the Stringer race for that reason. We're going to see if that scares off GWS today. If it doesn't, they will surely keep their asking price at pick in the 50s. They currently have picks 56 and 53, and the next best after that is 37, which feels far too high in my opinion. Sam Edmund believes one of those picks gets it done, and Damien Barrett believes both 53 and 56 could be packaged together, which I would really like as a deal. That would help us be active late in the draft and have more capital, or more than enough capital for a Kako bid. And for those worried about a pick in the 50s, just look at Archie Roberts. I want to see this one get done. I would be very worried about Stringer returning to the club next year. year, I'm honestly at the stage where I'd be happy with one pick in the 50s even. I don't think he's worth heaps more anyway. I know many have criticised me for undervaluing Stringer. I am undervaluing him even more lately. I just think improving our club culture is worth more than 40 goals. Those 40 goals aren't winning us a flag anytime soon. I'd rather us get a tiny bit of draft capital in, rather than keeping him for another year just to see him leave for free the year after. So Jacob Konstanty is our latest trade target. He is out of contract at Sydney. If he is delisted, we could well pick him up. A former top 20 pick back in 2022, the same draft as Elijah Sartas and Lewis Hayes, but he hasn't been able to play a game in that stacked Sydney forward line. It's hard to get in ahead of Papley, Heaney, Hayward and more. He's good enough to be on an AFL list, but the Swans want to free up list spots for the draft. Now, I think a lot here rests on Luke Parker and what happens there, so there's definitely a bit to play out here, and it's why the club hasn't delisted him yet, Sydney. But we have met with Konstanty. The club has met with him and discussed the possibility of him coming to Essendon as a delisted free agent, that is, if he is delisted. This is similar to Jackson Pryor, almost identical situation. We've met with both of them. We're waiting to see what happens with their futures at current clubs. If they are signed on, we won't, I guess, go for a trade, and if they aren't, if they're delisted, we might pick them up. We're just also, this does have big implications on Jaden Davey. Davey is likely to be delisted anyway, but if we then go up and pick Konstanty up, it's a given that he's gone. Jaden Davey and Jacob Konstanty will not be on the same list next year, especially with Isaac Kako coming in the draft. So we're in talks with Konstanty, personal terms and whatnot, but we're waiting to see if he's delisted. Alright, and some more quick updates before I head off. So Dylan Shield is still being labelled an outside chance for a move, despite Matt Rosa pretty much declaring that he'd be staying. I'm still pretty confident Shield remains with the club next year, but there is still a tiny watch on him in the next few days if another club comes knocking. And now with the impending pick 9 Melbourne swap on the way, it's likely that our future second pick is off the market for clubs interested in swapping for a current second. We did have it on the market, and there was a link with Carlton, who have already traded away their current second. But this won't be happening even with another team, I reckon, just because we will now have enough draft points to match a bid for Kako anyway, so we're not going to need any other pick trades involving future swaps, although there is a chance we split either pick 28 or 31 if we acquire it. That way we can have later capital that doesn't get eaten up as easily. Some VFL news: we've announced a new head coach. Assistant coach Dale Tapping will be taking the reins in 2025 as our VFL coach. He takes over from the outgoing Blake Caracella. There is still a vacancy with our assistants though. And finally, with our 2025 draft hand improving, or about to improve, it is time to look at some potential trade targets. I'm not going to list them all off, but we have been linked to Harley Reid and Luke Davies-Uniacke already. And Andrew Brayshaw becomes a free agent, but there are also plenty of Victorians currently at interstate clubs, players like Finn Callaghan, Lee Kalia, Miles Bergman, Tom Berry. I could go on. If we don't trade up on draft night, we are going to have a war chest, not just from a draft pick point of view, but from a salary cap point of view. We are said to be absolutely loaded, and this year's free agency pool really wasn't strong enough to be involved in, but next year there are heaps of free agents and heaps of trade options, so I reckon we'll possibly be talking about that a lot next year, kind of the same way we are talking about Freo this year, and even Essendon in 2023, so keep an eye out for 2025. Alright, that is that. Trade update for Monday done. I might see you later today, depending on what happens with our pick swap. I think we should expect to see that one get done, so stay tuned for another video, maybe later afternoon, and of course, there is also a chance more Stringer news comes out, so stay tuned for tomorrow's video as well. But that is all. Like if you enjoyed, subscribe if you're new, I guess, and go Bombers.